The film which you are about to see is an account of the tragedy which befell a group of 5 youths, in particular Sally Hardesty and her invalid brother Franklin. It is all the more tragic in that they were young, but had they lived very, very long lives, they could not have expected, nor would they have wished to see as much of the mad and macabre as they were to see that day. For them, an idyllic summer afternoon drive became a nightmare. The events of that day were to lead to the discovery of one of the most bizarre crimes in the annals of American history.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
This is Texas Ranger Revington, date of August 23rd, 1973. Texas Rangers assigned to case file TCM-1973-05. This warning precedes review of footage recovered at the Sawyer residence. The material documents conditions and acts that fall outside the standard crime scenes. We made this video to prepare you accordingly. The exterior approach is compromised by isolation, debris, and extreme Texas heat. Dry sun-bleached surroundings produce a visual distortion. Heat shimmer and harsh light flatten the depth, making distance and movement difficult to judge before entry. Interior conditions escalate rapidly. Ventilation is minimal. Heat is trapped inside. Hallways are narrow. Floors are uneven. The footage documents extreme violence within the house. Victims were pursued through confined spaces, struck with blunt instruments, dragged deeper into the structure, restrained, confined in cages, and suspended on meat hooks. Furniture constructed from skeletal remains is present in primary living areas. Human and animal bones are visible throughout the residence. Members of the Sawyer family were found deceased within the residence, as shown within the recovered footage. Bodies remain in place. Clothing and masks are intact. Their presence contributes to visual confusion. Outside, the sun washes the landscape into yellows, browns, and grays, reinforcing heat, decay, and exposure. Inside, the light turns pale and sickly, bone whites, rusted reds, and deep shadows. Sharp contrast throws off depth perception and can make threats feel closer or suddenly present. Your role is documentation only. Photograph and record as found. Do not move, rearrange, or remove items unless you are authorized. Stay alert for heat stress and disorientation if it happens. Stop moving, hold your position, and reestablish your bearings before continuing. This is the end of the debriefing. Be safe. May God be with all of us.
So the footage you just saw, that was something I uncovered after months of searching online. It was never officially released to the public. The Rangers, they were fooled into believing it was a real crime scene because the production design was so convincing. Now, we're going to step behind the scenes, and we're going to see how every detail was crafted to make the horror of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre feel as real as it did. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it isn't a traditional horror film or slasher. It's more structured to feel like recovered evidence, grounding the story in realism instead of spectacle. In the opening narration, the horror comes from isolation, heat, and unpredictability. Violence is sudden and often implied with no dramatic buildup or release. They quietly support the realism through neglect and the decay, reinforcing a sense that this place was already broken long before anyone even arrived. The result is a film meant to exhaust the viewer, not entertain them. A brutal, immersive experience that feels less like watching a movie, more like surviving an incident. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre takes place in the summer of 1973 in rural East Texas near Austin. It was filmed in a small town called Red Rock. The story centers on an isolated farmhouse at the end of a dusty, sun-scorched road, surrounded by parched fields, gnarled up trees, and endless oppressive heat. When I say endless, I mean endless, and we'll get into that. The remote setting amplifies isolation and unease, turning the sparse, unforgiving Texas backcountry into a character all in its own right, shaping the terror that's about to unfold. This environment makes the horror feel grounded and believable, reinforcing the sense that the characters have wandered into a place that's cut them off from the world. The empty roads, the oppressive heat, and the decaying landscapes create vulnerability and isolation, making it clear that once something goes wrong, there's nowhere to escape and nobody is coming to help you. Color and lighting work together to make the film feel raw, uncomfortable, and realistic. The exterior scenes use harsh natural lighting that creates washed out yellows, dusty browns, and faded greens. reflecting the dry Texas landscape and the intense heat. This bright lighting exposes everything, makes the environment feel bleak and lifeless rather than cinematic or stylized. Inside the house, the lighting becomes dim and uneven, with shadows filling rooms and hallways. Color palette shifts to bone whites, rusted reds, and dull grays, created by the set's animal bones, decaying walls, and old metal objects. The contrast between bones and dark shadows makes certain details stand out suddenly, increasing tension and making the environment feel chaotic and disturbing. In this movie, wardrobe and makeup practically tell the story on their own. The travelers look like any early 70s teens, tank tops, bell bottoms, casual and carefree, which makes them feel familiar and vulnerable. The killers, on the other hand, they wear grimy, mismatched clothes that radiate danger, decay, and a life shaped by violence. Makeup is subtle but incredibly effective. In 1974's version of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the props, they do more than fill the frame. They reveal character and make the horror feel real. Director Tobe Hooper used everyday objects, decaying environments, and shocking practical materials to tell the story. The Sawyer family's home, it's filled with bones, it's filled with skulls, and furniture made from real human remains. Yeah, that's right, real human remains. That gives us the unsettling authenticity. Real skeletons were brought in from abroad because they were cheaper and looked better than the plastic ones available here. While hundreds of animal carcasses that include cows, goats, deers, dogs, chickens, and even an armadillo were sourced locally to create that grotesque slaughterhouse aesthetic.
The original script called for there to be a run-over dog in the road. It would show a shot of this run-over dead dog and come up to the van going by. But they didn't want to shoot that because their delicate sensibilities meant that they'd have to get close enough to shoot it and it would just stink. I was out driving around the countryside and saw a freshly killed armadillo that had just been hit by a car, so I took it home.
So that ended up being the dead thing in the road and not the dead dog. Domesticated creatures, and it was just too horrible.
You've got an armadillo, we'll just put it down on the ground, run over it, and splatter its guts everywhere.
Everyday objects reflect the family's twisted background. The chainsaw, an ordinary tool to most, but turned into a terrifying weapon for them. It symbolizes the brutality and the industrial labor the family treats as routine. Grandpa's hammer, that represents the old way of slaughtering livestock, a violent tradition preserved within the family. Leatherface's masks are probably the most key element. Each one, including the killing mask, the old woman mask, and the pretty lady mask, shows a different persona that he embodies within the family, making him unpredictable and unsettling, while revealing the strange, performative roles he takes on depending on the situation.
I worked a long time doing experimentations of material to try to make something that might look like human skin.
So even the victims' props matter. Franklin's wheelchair, the group's van, their personal belongings highlight vulnerability, normalcy, and the intrusion of ordinary life. Temperatures inside that farmhouse regularly exceeded 120 degrees.
The dinner scene, though it takes place at night, was shot during the day. So we covered up all the windows, or they covered up the windows, and then we had all this light in there. So that room was probably 120 degrees.
The combination of heat, stench, and sweat made working conditions almost unbearable, but it added that unintentional layer of realism.
Boy, was it hot, and the meat got rotten in a hurry.
There was a moment during the film during the dinner scene, when I went out and threw up.
One of the most chilling set pieces was obviously the bone. It was stacked floor to ceiling with human and animal bones. It felt like a ritualized shrine to death, reflecting the family's obsession with mortality.
I was working part-time for a veterinarian, so I had access to a huge boneyard. I know there were some monkey bones out there, and Bob just had a field day. He took his knapsack, and it was hilarious watching him just jumping over all these things, jumping for joy, and just loading up his knapsack like a complete insane person.
There was a lot of collecting of dead animal parts.
The walls, furniture, and lighting, making it a visual extension of the family's messed up psychology. The sheer scale of bones, real human skeletons, and carefully arranged animal remains amplified all the tension and horror by making the environment and props feel authentic, using real human bones, decomposing animal remains, the bone room, and every single unsettling object. Hooper convinced the audience that this is horror by making the environment and props feel authentic. In the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, what we see tells the story just as much as what we hear. and every prop, mask, and object contributes to the deeply immersive, unforgettable experiences.
I love movies.